We pick up in the middle of the night with a phone call, but it's from Mr. Edgar, so Garibaldi needs to take it. Can't keep your richest client waiting, no matter the hour. It's just making sure that something gets through customs. It's nothing illegal or dangerous, just something that someone might want to take and rob him of more money that he could use to swim through, like Scrooge McDuck. Meanwhile, Sheridan is having trouble sleeping because he hasn't heard back from Delenn, and there's word of fighting in the capital. That whole Minbari don't kill Minbari thing, that's gotten kind of strained. The once pristine halls are now filled with rubble and refugees. Lanier stops by to share the leader of the warrior caste's ultimatum. Surrender, or for the good of their people, this city will be annihilated. Well, at least it'll be for a good reason. After the titles, Lita is trying to get a job, and she's great on paper. But there's the little matter of technically being a rogue telepath, and corporations, they don't like to have descriptors like that on their books. That's about as welcome in a personnel file as puts on puppet shows with his dick. Lita says that Sheridan can vouch for her, but his word isn't much help for a company based on Earth. Lex Luthor doesn't exactly accept vouching done by Superman. Back on Minbar, Nehrun visits their illustrious leader in the midst of the attack on their own planet.
They assumed they were our equal in all things. They have now learned otherwise.
What a bunch of idiots, huh? Thinking their species was united towards a common future. Hope they learn their lesson.
The cities can be rebuilt.
As far as those who died, I feel for them as much as you do. But we all die, Nehrun. Only the timing varies.
You can tell he's new at this. Most mass murderers have thought of better rationalizations than, if they didn't want to die, they shouldn't have made the mistake of being mortal, should they? He's still butthurt about the Earth-Minbari war. Man, let it go. He says they started it for a stupid reason and ended it for a stupider one. If this is what it takes to sort their society out, then fine. Can't make an omelet without obliterating a couple of cities.
Life and death are simply two possible consequences, both equal, neither valued nor feared above the other. For a warrior, death is simply the release from our obligation.
That's easy to say from this chair, buddy. Back on Babylon 5, Zack spots Garibaldi doing his thing, but before he can investigate, someone reveals a whole new dollop of shit to drop in his coffee. Bester's arrived. Oh, nothing to do with the leadership of B5. It's to handle an internal Psi-Corps matter. It's got nothing to do with them, and he's not here to make trouble. So, if this is an open port like Sheridan and Ivanova claim, Zack has no reason to stop Bester if he's minding his own business. So, while Bester amuses himself insulting Zack behind his back, and the security officers right to their faces, Zack chases down Garibaldi. Well, Garibaldi plays dumb, even when Zack says he knows about slipping packages through the station, and only will say that his client list is confidential. But Zack points out something about Edgar's, the person that he's heard is one of those clients. Despite the guy's enormous wealth, there's not one photograph of the man. And frankly, if a guy is that rich, why would he want Garibaldi? Well, that remark goes over like a fart during a moment of silence, and Garibaldi says anything he does is no more a crime than taking over a space station and all of its equipment in order to set up your own private empire. Mic drop. On Minbar, Delenn calls in Lanier to say the religious caste is prepared to surrender. So while they get ready to endure the unendurable, Lita has a visit from Bester, so she's in kind of the same boat. He's here because he knows that she's trying to find work because of all the corporations looking for Psi-Corps references for her, which means that she's probably broke or close to it. But he has a solution between being a rogue and having to go back to the Psi-Corps on Earth. A special list of those who are considered to be deep cover. Essentially what it means is you have to wear the gloves, you have to wear the tiny little badge, you have to kick back the 10% to the Corps, just like everybody does. But otherwise, you're free to go wherever you want and do whatever you want. All he wants in return for that is to agree to turn her body over to the Psi-Corps after she's dead. Oh, and only if she dies of natural causes, in case she's worried that she might accidentally fall down a flight of stairs or have a far too vigorous massage of her throat. He wants the Corps to be able to learn how the Vorlons modified her from a P5 into whatever the hell she is now, and he's prepared to give her life back to do it. But she hates the idea and walks away. There is no way he's getting his hands on her body, live or dead. Meanwhile, Neroon is making arrangements for the surrender, choosing the place where before Valen's arrival, the Minbari settled such matters. As a sign to all the Minbari that this change is merely a return to their traditions in a sense. Oh, the boss likes this plan, but there's one thing he wants to add, ensuring that when Delenn leaves, her ship meets a tragic end. Yeah, it's much harder when your enemies don't want your body after you've died. Back on B5, Zack comes by Lita's place with some bad news. She's being reassigned to smaller quarters. Without the Vorlons to pay the bills, they need to assign these to someone who can afford them. And the fact that the Vorlons are only gone because she helped out, well, you don't have to go to down below, just to the sucks to be you wing of the station. Now that he's finished buttering her up, he's got a job he wants her to do, but not to worry, it's a paying gig. He wants her to scan Garibaldi, except that's illegal and unethical, and would mean betraying the trust of the very first person that she met on Babylon 5. She may be broke, but she's not doing that. Elsewhere on the station, cartoonist Scott Adams is doing a cameo where he tries to hire Garibaldi to find his dog and cat.
They're planning to take over the galaxy.
I feel that way sometimes about my cats. Half the time when I'm trying to do this show, some fuzzball's sleeping on me. As Mr. Adams goes to spread some joy that way, Lita stops by looking for a job, and while Garibaldi doesn't use telepaths to get information, it does occur to him that Lita's abilities can be helpful as a lookout during transactions like the ones earlier. But things get ugly, because Bester stops by. Not that I'm casting aspersions on the fine features of Walter Koenig, but because Lita says that he just scanned Garibaldi. Well, Garibaldi flies off the handle at that. Security has to grab him, and he throws a punch at one of them. If Zack's right and Garibaldi's planning to take his old job back eventually, it's going to be awkward. On Minbar, as they head towards the site of the surrender, Delenn leaves a small scroll with instructions for Lanier on what to do after the ceremony. So they're all gathered together to do all the rites and wherefores and other shite that goes on at these things. But while Delenn formally surrenders, she interrupts when Big Douche Nozzle starts talking about the Warrior Council that will be created to replace the Grey Council. Her surrender doesn't mean they've agreed to be your living furniture now, she says. They've only acknowledged that the warrior caste is stronger, which is thanks to centuries of everybody making them so. That doesn't suddenly make them the best equipped to lead the way. Now, if you want to go old school, fine. We're really going to settle this old school. We step into this circle, and the light from above slowly starts to burn you, but it gets more and more intense as it opens up. Whoever remains inside to the very end will die, and that's how you know you've won. You've died. So all it takes for caste to win is for their representative to be prepared to lay down their life in order to make it happen. It's time to put that, oh, death is no big deal to a warrior thing to the test on Douche Nozzle. Oh, not 100% on that name. I mean, I know he's from the House of Douche Nozzle. I'm just not sure if that's actually his name, but I'm going to just stick with it. Douche Nozzle. Well, he's on the spot now. On the one hand, he doesn't want to look like a big pussy. On the other hand, though, he doesn't want to die. After winning this fight, to die now seems like kind of an anticlimax. I mean, I'm supposed to die, it's just, I really don't want to. But Neroon rebukes him for not joining Delenn in the circle. If he wants to elevate the warrior caste, stand up and be a man and get in the circle. Nah, you just want to stay out here, killing or sending others out to die, but you're not prepared to pay with your own life. I mean, it is what you've been fighting for, right? You can win everything by paying just one life. It's just one you happen to be very attached to. So, grudgingly, he joins her in the circle, tries to convince her that they both should just walk out together and share the power, but she refuses. Even when he jumps out to save his own cowardly hide, Delenn stays in, to Nehru's horror. The plan was going to be that she would exit after him, but it's not enough to make her point. She's going to stay in here till the bitter end. So, Nehru, who entered this series wanting to use a dead man as a symbol of war, who beat the shit out of Marcus to try and oppose her, shows who he has become by saving her.
I was born warrior caste, but I see now the calling of my heart is religion.
How about that, huh? What a way to go, yeah?
His final words are to end the war and call upon all of Minbar to follow her, his former enemy. Now that's a real drop-the-mic moment. Meanwhile, Edgars calls up Garibaldi in the middle of the night again, and he wasn't in that great of a mood to start with. Again. To make it worse, Edgars makes clear that Garibaldi's continued employment means not hiring Lita Alexander. No telepaths in his organization, no matter how far down the food chain. We don't hear it, but clearly she doesn't take it well, and Bester's personal log notes his delight on further alienating Garibaldi as part of his plan, which hints that he might have something to do with the manipulations that we've been talking about. And Lita now has no choice but to take Bester up on his offer. A real winner of a day for him. Sometimes it pays to be the Black Hat. Back at Minbar, a struggling Delenn finally works to end this, to restore the Grey Council, but a new one, this time with only 2 from the religious and warrior castes each, and the other 5 of the worker class, shifting it from a balance of equals to 2 of the castes advising the third, who would ultimately then have to choose the way forward for their people. The center place is reserved in memory of Nehru for bringing a final conclusion to this for their people. The irony of this is that the upstart leader of the warrior caste will live out his life and then be forgotten, while Nehru, in death, has achieved immortality. Back on B5, the final point comes up that is driving the events starting now. That point when the slingshot that I've been mentioning is released. Ivanova storms in ranting, and it's not about Bester. It's about Clark sending in ships and wiping out helpless cargo vessels that are packed with refugees. 10,000 die. Sheridan shares her outrage and makes the choice that now is when they go on the move to end this. Militarily, if that's what it now requires, but this is going to end. And it's going to be uglier than an unflushed toilet after Pakmara used it. Moments of transition is recommended. The resolution of the Minbari crisis is well done, and Bester always brings a great element to the episodes, but this one especially. The way that Lita, after all that has happened, after everything that she's done, falls through the cracks here shows how easy it can happen to anybody on B5. But especially under these circumstances, what's happened to her. I mean, if you can't retain someone, you may not be able to call on them when you need them. I mean, she is now Psycor, and it's a decision she didn't want to have to make, and she's forced to make because she's been left alone in all of this, and kicked out of her quarters to make room for someone else. Well, suddenly, she's not going to be as reliable as ally as you might need, but what do you expect? Tomorrow the story continues with no surrender, no retreat. I should probably preface, though, that this is a very old re-upload, so don't be surprised if it assumes that you have no idea what's been going on with B5. Doing things out of order is sometimes a problem.